Hey folks, welcome to Bear Mountain. Today we're working on biochar. It's the time of year here in Western Oregon where we can get in there and start getting rid of this refuge and turn it into char. And what we're going to be doing is doing burns over the course of this next month to get rid of a lot of waste that I've cut during the winter time and prunings from the spring. And we're going to turn this stuff into char that'll be used in our tunnels and garden areas in the next, not this year, but next year. So the whole emphasis we're going to be doing on over the course of this next month, when time's available and we can burn, is to get a good load going, get the pit burned up, and then empty the pit out. So it's kind of wash, rinse, and repeat. I want to kind of show you a bit about some of the stuff we're going to be using this year to turn into char, and it's going to be kind of a mixture of a lot of different things that we've cut, some prunings, some things I've been cutting down, some old Lombardy poplar trees, and we probably got enough, I think, probably this year to make almost 3 yards of char, which is going to be pretty big. So let me just kind of walk you through the process here. I'll show you the stuff, and then I'll show you, the results of our last burn that we did a couple days ago, and then you can kind of get an idea of how this process works. So here's a classic example. This pile here, it's been sitting here since last spring. You can already see it's already got a little blackberry growing on it. We're going to be turning this guy into char. This old prunings from last year, plus some scrap wood I took off of some of the poplars that I began cutting down. And then we've got prunings from this year that will go into it. And then you can kind of see there's a pile back a little bit further behind the apple tree there. That's another pile of prunings. What we did do is during the winter time, this last winter, let me get you in a better position here. As you can kind of see, there's some downed trees, and I've got some fence work to repair. I'm going to start taking all that stuff that you see laying down there, and I'm going to be turning that into char this year too. Plus we've got some general piles of cut blackberries that we did last year, and we've got enough stuff in here to, like I said, it's probably going to make close to 3 yards. So here's the pit. This particular burn, like I said, we did a couple days ago, and I probably got about somewhere, it's hard to guesstimate for sure, but being this close to the edge, I've probably got somewhere close to 15 cubic feet of char, and it's got all kinds of various sizes in it. You can kind of see there's bigger chunks and smaller chunks. One of the things we do when you burn with this is you got to kind of understand the process is there's going to be a certain point where you cut it off, and once you cut it off and say I'm not going to add any more fuel to it, you let the stuff on the top burn for a little bit, but it's not going to burn all the way through, because what you're trying to do is just get as much turned into charcoal as you can, and then you're going to take a hose and you're going to just flood this thing with water. And the whole idea is to quench this fire, because these coals are hot, and if they were left unto their own devices just to smolder for a while, you would end up with a lot more ash than you would charcoal out of it. And the whole point on this is we want to stop that process of burning and leave it in the char mode that it is. Now, this pit is designed to, as material is piled in on it, the material that's underneath it that has burned, that is maybe charcoal phase, gets less and less oxygen because it continually gets covered by new layers of charcoal and ash. And that as that oxygen is depleted, that burning, they still may be hot, but they don't actually burn, so they begin to continue to pyrolyze. And you actually, that's the process of how you end up getting biochar out of it. It's not, charcoal like you get from a briquette, for your barbecue. That's not what this is. This has, very little, oils in it and stuff like that. It's not pure like it was done in some form of a mechanical kiln, where they would actually, control the process, on an industrial site. But what you're looking at is you're looking at, it's probably, a good 80% of this is charcoal. Some of it is not charred all the way through, and some of it is maybe just organic material that didn't burn yet, or was pretty close to starting to burn. So it's not 100%, but it is good enough for what we're going to be doing, is using as a soil amendment. Now, once you stop the burning, one of the things that happens is you end up with oversized material. And that, when you're burning this stuff, you don't want to sit there and go, I'm going to wait for all the stuff on top to get completely burned down. You don't want to do that. You get to a point where you'd say, look, it looks like it's about 50-60% burned, good enough. And then you wet all those pieces down, knowing full well that you're going to add them into the next burn, and they'll continue the process of becoming into charcoal. So how do we get the material out? Well, it's old back work. We get into the pit, get a shovel, haul it out by wheelbarrow, then we'll put it into an area where we're going to dump it. Now, my grass is just now coming out of dormancy on the place, so it's not super tall. So what I'm going to be doing is I think I'm going to be burning ahead of time here more stuff than I can actually get treated with grass, as we talked about in the last memo. So I'm going to be stacking it aside for now because I've only got a very limited time this time of year to burn and get it done. And then as the grass gets tall enough and green enough, I'm going to be then kind of taking those piles and making it, set it up for, its final, I guess, biology addition to it. And so, but the key, what I'm going to focus in on now, if it's this next month when I have time, is I want to make sure this pit is open, so whenever I get a good day of burning, I can go ahead and do it. All right, so this pit is approximately about 2 feet deep, and it's settled down quite a bit since my burn time. And I'm just going to use this big scoop shovel. As you can kind of see, the material, it's got a bunch of sizes in it, oversizes, some of it not burned all the way through. I'm not going to worry about that kind of stuff too much. But a lot of it is just char that, it simply breaks up. And some of it doesn't right away, but that's okay. And so I'm going to just make sure that I get this completely dug out. It's nice to have a good scoop. And then we're going to get the material put over where we stored our other char that we have treated and is ready to apply, because that's where we're going to be building our next pile once we get the grass. All right, so we got the pit completely dug out, and when you kind of go in and look at it, what you can see is, there's a little bit of char left at the bottom, but we took out a good 1.5 feet all the way around. So this thing is about 2 feet deep and about 4 feet wide at its widest. And it's kind of an oval shape. And let me show you the material and how much we dug out of it. All right, I've got 2 piles here, which you'll notice. The one on the right has a little bit of weed in it, and I'm using that just as green organic material. And I'm going to put a little piece of plastic over the top that I got, just to kind of let all those weeds die out in there. This is material that's aged enough and I can apply. And then I've got the new pile. This is what I dug out of the pit. Now, if you stand back and take a look at, I'll back up a little bit. You can see that I've already got a pile that's probably about 4 or 5 feet at the base, kind of pyramidal shape. Comes out about 2.5, 3 feet. So I'm not good at calculus, but I'm guessing that I got pretty close to that 15 cubic feet that I was talking about. That looks like about 1/3 of a yard. So one of the other things to note here is, look at the size of the material. This one on the right was predominantly blackberry. You notice the size. There's some bigger pieces, but for the most part, not too much. And then I go over here and look at the new stuff. And this is predominantly wood, brush scraps. And you can see that it kind of burns down and almost looks pretty much the same. So I know a lot of people have had questions about biochar, about what we do and why we do it. And it's really, for us, it's as long as I've got material on the place that I can't really run through a composting, type system very well without, having to shred it or do something like that and put it into, more, manageable size pieces. This seems to work out pretty well for us, and it's a way of getting carbon back into the soil. So some people have questions like, okay, well, what's the pH of this stuff? And honestly, once it comes right out of the pile, it's probably got a high pH. I haven't actually measured it. I probably should do that. But I'm guessing it's probably somewhere around 8, 9, somewhere in that range. Most of the material, though, once it's gone through its process of aging and has had rain on it, and biology's been working on it, it's closer to neutral. And, as you remember from that picture from if you saw last week's video, you saw the weed cover that was growing over last year's material, and they had no problems at all growing in it. So it's not really a pH issue once it's gone through, and aged itself out. Some people say, well, can't I just use like charcoal briquettes that I get? I can get the ones that don't have any additives to it. They're just, plain charcoal briquettes. I don't know. I'm always leery about stuff that comes through an industrial process, that they put some kind of binder on it, to keep it in the form of a, briquette, so it doesn't turn into powder, when you're handling it. You don't want to buy a bag of dust for your barbecue, right? So I would stay away from doing something like that. And if you can't do, biochar in this kind of method because, say, you can't burn in your area, there are other things you can do. You might look on the internet for folks who have made they're called retorts, meaning what they're doing is they're burning. They kind of have like a two-stage burner. They'll take like a barrel, and then they'll have another barrel inside of it that actually has material they want to turn into a char, and then they'll light a material around the outside of it that heats up and basically cooks the material in the inside barrel. It's kind of an interesting process. It doesn't really give off any smoke or anything like that once it gets rolling, any more than a barbecue would. And there are people who have made these on a homemade basis, and you can kind of research that. They're a lot more involved. Again, I have the luxury of being out here where I don't have to worry about that kind of stuff, so I didn't really go that route. And but if you have smaller material on your place and you want to turn it into char, that is certainly a viable method to do it. And I would think you could even do it. I've seen examples where people have built these things in a residential neighborhood, average backyard type thing, and it doesn't really put out any smoke, because what happens in these double retorts is the smoke that comes off of heating the wood goes back and burns. So it reaches a certain point where it just kind of keeps circulating and burns. So the only thing that comes out the flue of this burn barrel is just heat. So it's pretty kind of cool the way that does that. For us here, though, it's got to be simpler. I don't want to spend a lot of time on making something that's got a lot of moving parts or something I have to maintain. I used to do a lot of that kind of stuff when I was younger, but then when I get older, I just kind of look at it and go, what's the easiest way to get this done and get, instead of perfection, I get 85% of the way there, and usually that's good enough. And anything I'm putting into this, if it doesn't burn, if it doesn't char all the way through, then it's kind of like I'm adding just biomass to the soil. And most of the pieces, I'll make certain I'm not adding big pieces, like big chunks of wood that didn't burn. But if there's small little pieces, that are harder to break down or something like that, that didn't char all the way through, it's not that big of a deal to put a few of those in. And when you're applying, that's also a good time to kind of take a look at it and see what it is. Maybe you don't want to put that piece in, so you just kind of put it aside and throw it out to be burned later, that sort of thing. I guess, from that standpoint, this seems to work pretty good. So anyway, I appreciate everybody watching the videos, and this is going to be all for this week. And thank you for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week on the next video. Bye-bye.